The 30th of November, 1963, 8 days after Dallas. A woman sits down alone in a room with a stack of manila envelopes and a tape recorder. The envelopes are her own filing system. Scraps, invitations, notes. Whatever the day generated, one envelope per day, kept so she can remember. She presses record, and she begins to describe the 22nd of November. The motorcade, the sound. A Secret Service man vaulting over the seat and throwing her husband to the floor of the car and telling him to get down. The car's accelerating faster and faster. She would not stop recording for 5 years and 2 months. When she finally stopped on the last day of January 1969, she had made 123 hours of tape, roughly 1,750,000 words. It is the most complete first-person account of an American presidency that any First Lady has ever produced, and nothing else is close. In 1970, she published a book out of it. The book ran to about 800 pages, which sounds like a great deal, until you do the arithmetic. She had cut it down by a factor of about 7. She chose which 7th. America decided a long time ago what Lady Bird Johnson was, the endurer, the gentle one, the woman who planted the wildflowers and put up with a monster. And that portrait is not exactly wrong, which is what makes it so effective at hiding what she actually was. Because the money in that marriage was hers. The business was hers. And the record, the one historians now use to understand the Johnson White House. She built it herself, edited it herself, and released it on her own schedule. Start in Karnak. Karnak, Texas, is a few hundred people 15 miles from the Louisiana line, cotton and bayou country in the far east of the state. Claudia Alta Taylor was born there in December 1912, in a big brick house her father had bought from the family that built it, and her father owned the general store and a great deal of the land around it, and was not a man anybody crossed. Her mother died when she was 5. Her father's sister, Aunt Effie, came from Alabama to raise her. A frail, dreamy, cultured woman who taught the girl to love books and nature, and was in no condition to teach her anything else. The child grew up alone in a very large house with a very hard father, and she got the name that stuck from a nurse named Alice Tittle, who said she was as pretty as a lady bird. She hated it. It never left her. Pay attention to what she did with the education, because it is the tell. She went to the University of Texas at Austin and took a degree in history in 1933. Then she stayed an extra year and took a second degree. In journalism, that was not a decorative choice for a young woman of her class in 1934. She wanted to know how the press worked. She would go on to own a broadcasting company and manage the most demanding press relationship in the country, and she started acquiring the skills for both before she had met the man who would need them. She met him in September 1934, in the office of a mutual friend in Austin. He was Lyndon Baines Johnson, 26, a congressional secretary from the Hill Country, and he already had a date that evening. He asked her to breakfast the next morning at the Driscoll Hotel anyway. The breakfast lasted the entire day. They drove around Austin, and he told her his salary, his insurance, his ambitions, and everything he owned, and then he asked her to marry him. She had known him for about 24 hours. She said no, or rather, she said not yet, and her relatives told her to wait, and she wrote to him about it. One of roughly 90 letters the two of them exchanged over the next 10 weeks. Letters the LBJ Library did not release to the public until 2013. In one, she tells him that everybody keeps urging her to wait 2 or 3 months, that 2 months is not long enough to know the man you're going to marry. Her father, who had met a great many young men she brought home, gave the verdict the family repeated afterwards. This time she had brought home a man. On the 16th of November, 1934, Lyndon Johnson drove to Karnak and issued an ultimatum. They would do it now, he told her, or they would never do it. They were married the next day at St. Mark's Episcopal Church in San Antonio, 10 weeks from first breakfast to wedding. She said later that she felt like a moth drawn to a flame. That is a sentence people quote as romance. Read it again. Nobody who has ever described a happy decision has reached for that image. Now, the money, because this is the part the Wildflower story is built to cover. In 1943, Lady Bird Johnson bought a radio station, KTBC in Austin, 250 watts, daytime only, losing money, in trouble with the Federal Communications Commission over regulatory violations. She paid $17,500 for it, with a certified check drawn on the inheritance from her mother. And she ran it. This is not decorative either. She went to Austin and worked the station full-time, sold advertising herself, hired the staff, went over the books, and by her own account cleaned the floors. 6 months in, she posted her first monthly profit, $18. Under Texas law, the station was hers alone because she had bought it with her own inheritance, as her husband Lyndon owned half of everything it earned. What it earned was the Johnson fortune. KTBC became an AM station, then FM, then in 1952, the only television station in Austin, then stations in Waco and Corpus Christi, then a cable system. By 1948, Lyndon Johnson was telling friends he was a millionaire. Every dollar of it grew out of a check his wife wrote. So how did a failing 250-watt daytimer become that? Here the account splits. And this is the real historical argument about the Johnsons, so let's take it properly. The family's version, which Lyndon repeated all his life, is that his wife was a formidable businesswoman who bought a distressed asset cheaply and worked it. There is real evidence for that. She was good at it, everyone who worked there said so, and she stayed hands-on for decades. Robert Caro's version, laid out across his biography, is that the crucial factor was not her business ability at all. In 1943, the FCC, which had to approve every broadcast license transfer, was politically exposed, and Lyndon Johnson used his influence in Congress to protect it. Caro's argument is that the agency knew who its friends were. The previous owners had spent years fighting the commission for permission to do the things KTBC was suddenly permitted to do within months of the sale, move to a better frequency, increased power, broadcast around the clock. Then a network affiliation with CBS after Johnson went to New York to see William Paley personally. Then later, the only VHF television license in a market where every competitor was stuck up the dial on UHF. Even Time magazine, writing during the presidency, noted the friction between the two stories. The Johnson family law credited the wife's management, and that other people in Austin remembered a syndicate of businessmen who had tried to buy the same station and been refused. Holt both. She did the work. He moved the regulator. The fortune required both, and the version America was told mentioned only one of them, because the version America was told needed a wife who was decorative rather than a partner who was material, which brings us to Longlea. Charles Marsh owned newspapers, including the Austin American Statesman, and he was one of the most important patrons of Lyndon Johnson's early career. Money, access, favourable coverage. He also had a mistress. She was 19 when he met her, 6 feet tall, blonde, well-read, and she ran a salon at the 800-acre Virginia estate Marsh built for her in the Blue Ridge, called Longlea. Her name was Alice Glass. Johnson first came to Longlea in 1937. By the following year, according to Caro's reconstruction, he and Alice were involved. Now, sourcing, because the shape of the evidence here matters. There is no letter in which either of them admits the affair. What exists is a body of interviews Caro conducted decades afterwards with people who were there, chiefly Alice's sister Mary Louise, and a lobbyist named Frank Althoff who moved in that circle. Those are late recollections from interested witnesses, and they should be weighed as such. But they are broadly consistent. They were gathered by the most exacting biographer in the field, and the second volume of that biography went through the Johnson archive as thoroughly as anyone ever has. The affair is not a tabloid claim. It is the settled finding of serious scholarship, arrived at through the back door because the front door was locked. What was Lady Bird's position? Althoff's answer when Caro asked him was that of course she knew, that he was sure she did, And the reasoning he gave is the sort of ordinary domestic logic that is hard to argue with. Her husband kept going to Longlea for weekends without her, at times when Charles Marsh was demonstrably not at home, which she could have established with a single question. And when Marsh was home, Lyndon Johnson brought his wife. Sit with that for a second, because it is the most quietly brutal fact in this story. The arrangement required Ladybird Johnson to be a guest at the house of the woman her husband was seeing, at dinners hosted by the man who was funding his career, and to be pleasant. Her own recorded comment about Alice Glass years later was that Alice helped educate the two of them about music and about a more elegant way of living than they had known. That is either extraordinary generosity or the most disciplined sentence any political wife has ever constructed. The record cannot settle which, and I would distrust anyone who says it can. The affair cooled after the war. They stayed in contact for the rest of their lives. In 1971, with Johnson retired to the ranch and 2 years from death, Alice sent him an antique brass eagle she had owned for 30 years, with a card that said it was for Lyndon, from Alice. She was not the only one. Johnson's infidelity was extensive and, among people who worked for him, not much of a secret. What is worth saying plainly is that the man's behaviour toward women, including his wife, has been documented in detail by every serious biographer he has, and none of it is disputed by his defenders. It is contextualised, which is a different thing. And through all of it, she stayed and she worked. Several miscarriages before Linda arrived in 1944 and Lucy in 1947. The Congressional Office kept open during the war. In 1955, when he had a heart attack that nearly killed him and could have ended everything, she helped hold the Senate Majority Leader's operation together until he came back. In the 1960 campaign, with Jacqueline Kennedy pregnant and off the trail, Ladybird Johnson made 150 appearances in 11 states in 71 days. Her husband once said the voters would happily have elected her over him. He said it as a joke. Nobody who looks at the record thinks it was one. Then Dallas and the aeroplane and the oath, and 8 days later a woman alone in a room with a tape recorder. Understand what she started doing, because nobody had done it before, and nobody has done it since. Every day, or near enough, for 5 years and 2 months, she talked into a machine. She used the manila envelopes to walk herself back through the day. She described the meetings, the arguments, the people, what they wore, what she thought of them, what her husband was like when the door closed. She recorded the Civil Rights Act and the Great Society and the Voting Rights Act. She recorded Vietnam and her own thinking about it, blind spots included. She recorded the assassination of Martin Luther King and the assassination of Robert Kennedy. She recorded her husband deciding not to run again, and the record shows she was not a bystander to that decision. When he was weighing whether to stand in 1968, he received a 9-page memo laying out the case. It opened with a draft of the announcement that he would not run, forcing him to feel what that would be like on the page. Then it set out what a continued presidency would look like, and it predicted, correctly, that he would announce in February or March of 1968 that he was not a candidate. The memo was written by his wife. That is not the Wildflower Lady, and the wildflowers themselves deserve better than the joke they became. Her beautification work was a national environmental campaign that put legislation through Congress, and it got filed under gardening because that was the only category America had for a First Lady in 1965. So here is the ledger, and it comes in 3 parts. Part 1, 1970. A White House diary is published by Holt, Rinehart, and Winston. Roughly 800 pages, drawn directly from the tapes. It is well reviewed, it is the definitive first-person account of the Johnson years, and it stays that way for decades. And she has cut it by a factor of about 7. Something in the order of 1.5 million words did not make the book, and every one of those decisions was hers. She described the finished thing as a record of significant days and some quiet ones. That is, a modest sentence doing enormous work. What she had actually done was edit her own presidency into publishable shape, And she was, remember, a trained journalist who had spent 20 years owning news outlets. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was the best qualified person in America to do it. Part 2, the decades after. The full audio went to the LBJ Presidential Library in Austin, and it came out in stages, transcribed, annotated, digitized, posted, entry by entry, over many years. If you go to the library's online collection now, you can find the 22nd of November 1963 and read the annotated transcript and see the note recording that an edited version of this day appeared in the 1970 book. You can also find something else in that catalogue, and it is the detail I would put on screen if I were cutting this. Withdrawal sheets. Pages pulled from the diary, logged by date, marked with a restriction classification. The finding aid tells you what is missing and does not tell you what it said. Part 3, 2023. A documentary filmmaker named Dawn Porter builds a film entirely out of the unedited audio, 123 hours of a woman's voice in an East Texas drawl, describing the inside of a presidency as it happened. And the person who comes off that tape is not the person from the book. She is a political operator with a hard eye for character, running a parallel assessment of everyone in her husband's government, managing a man in visible decline and shaping decisions that changed the country. 60 years late, a great many people met Lady Bird Johnson for the first time. She died in 2007 at 94, having outlived her husband by 34 years, and having never once, in any of them, contradicted the version of herself the country preferred. Now, put the two of them side by side, because it is the strangest fact about this marriage, and almost nobody notices it. They were both taping. Lyndon Johnson secretly recorded hundreds of hours of telephone calls from the White House. Other people, Box, she was never the person this story happened to. She was the one running the machine.